Talking about New Orleans by Jayne Cortez. Talking about New Orleans, about deforestation and the flood of voodoo paraphernalia, the Congo line losing its Congo, the funeral bands losing their funding, the killer winds humming intertribal warfare hums into two storm surges, touching down, tonguing the ground 3,000 times in a circle of grief. 4,000 times on a levee of lips, 5,000 times between ephema of fangs, everything fiendish, fetid, funky, swollen, overheated, and splashed with blood and guts and drops of urinated gin in syncopation with me. Riding through on a refrigerator covered with asphalt chips, with pieces of ragtime music charts, torn photo mug shots, and pulverized turtle shells from Biloxi. Me bumping against $1 million oil rig. Me in a ghost town floating on a river on top of a river. Me with 100 ton of crab legs and no evacuation plan. Me in a battered tree barking and howling with abandoned dogs, my cheeks stained with dried suicide kisses, my isolation rising with a rainbow of human corpses and fecal rat bones. Where is that fire chief in his big hat? Where are the fucking pumps, the rescue boats, and the famous coalition of bullhorns calling out names? Hey, I want my red life jacket now, and I need some sacred sandbags, some fix the levee powder, some blood pressure support juice, some get it together dust, some lucky rooftop charms, and some magic helicopter blades. I'm not prepared to live on the bottom of the water like Oshun. I don't have a house built on stilts. I can't cross the sea like Alacon. I'm not equipped to walk on water like Marie Laveau or swim away from a Titanic situation like Mr. Shine. Send in those padding engineers. I'm inside of my insides, and I need to distinguish between the nightmare, the mirage, the dream, and the hallucination. Give me statistics. How many residents died while waiting? How many drowned? How many suffocated? How many were hydrated? How many were separated? How many are missing? How many had babies? In any way, who's in charge of this confusion, this Gulf Coast engulfment, this displacement, this superdome shelter, this stench of stank, this demolition order, this crowded convention center chaos, making me crave solitary confinement? I am on my own, exhausted from fighting racist policies, exhausted from fighting off sex offenders, exhausted from fighting for cots, for tents, for trailers, for a way out of this anxiety, this fear, this emptiness, this avoidance, this unequal opportunity world of disappointments accumulating in my undocumented eye of no return tickets. Is this freedom? Is this global warming? Is this the new identity, me riding on a refrigerator through contaminated debris, talking to no one in particular about a storm that became a hurricane, and a hurricane that got violent and started eyeballing and whistling and stretching toward a category 3 domination that caught me in the numbness of my own consciousness, unprepared, unprotected, and made more vulnerable to destabilization by the corporate installation of human greed, human poverty, human invention of racism, and human neglect of the environment. I mean, Even Buddy Bolden came back to say, move to higher ground because a hurricane will not rearrange its creativity for you. And the river will meet the ocean in the lake of your flesh again. So move to higher ground and let your jungle find its new defense. Let the smell of your wisdom restore the power of pure air, and let your intoxicated shoreline rumble above and beyond the watermarks of disaster. I'm speaking of New Orleans, of deportation, of belching bulldozers, of poisonous snakes, of bruised bodies, of instability and madness, mechanism of indifference and process of elimination. I'm talking about transformation, about death re entering life with bon chance, bon ton roulé, bonjour, bon vie in New Orleans, bon. I like the real insistence on overwhelming the reader with its content, right? So there's a way in which you kind of, you begin the poem and you enter this world, and she doesn't ever let go of you. She never, the lines and the syntax and the lexicon is so tightly wound, and it goes on, right? I like the length of it, that it goes on for so long, and she like just, bombards you with the experience of this disaster, and then casts this like much wider net in which she contextualizes the disaster and the, social problems, social issues, who's at fault. So yeah, it reminds me of a lot of other people, there's a way in which there's a quality to it that reminds me of both Allen Ginsberg and Mary Baraka. So I like that kind of, not that it has to hearken necessarily to them, but I like that kind of intertextuality that, a poem can kind of speak across, outside of itself and into other poems and back and forth. Um, and it's an important poem. So, it's not about nothing. It's about kind of everything.